So one, concern that I have as my baby gets older and starts going to, here we have preschool in a couple of years and that sort of thing, is just being around other kids. Kids love to stick stuff in each other's faces and poke each other in the eyes, and I want him to be able to go to the playground and run around and have fun with all of his friends, but I have a particular concern about just him getting an eye injury and how his eye would heal or not from that happening. As someone with aniridia, what is your take on that, or your feeling for that? Is there really nothing that can be done and we just sort of have to let go and let it happen, or what would you suggest?
In regards to eye injury, I would say don't worry about it. I would say, I suppose you are at a higher risk of having an accident because you don't see things coming or whatever. So yeah, you are sort of at high risk of having collisions or a ball in the face, or that's something that happened to me a lot, was getting balls kicked in my face. Not deliberately, but just because I didn't duck fast enough, basically, or because I have less peripheral vision. So, I wouldn't see someone coming in to tackle me from the side, kind of thing. So, yes, you are at higher risk, but I would not specifically worry about eye injury per se. An eye injury is going to be a bad day at work, whatever the case.
Okay.
I was kept out, for example, of playing rugby or for your purposes American football, for example, because of, I guess, of that kind of just sort of greater likelihood of injury, of particularly sort of head injury kind of thing. That said, at break times, I would happily go out and play soccer all day long. I wasn't any good at it, of course, because I couldn't sort of judge distances and stuff very well. But no, I enjoyed playing that with my friends. But yeah, as far as kind of the formal education of physical education and things, I was taken out of the more physical ball games and things. I would happily go and play things like badminton and tennis and things like that. Again, not very good at it. But so I would happily run around and play it or tag or whatever you want to call it, things like that. And in fact, those are my sort of favourite games. Actually, I'm very tall and lanky, so I was a fast runner. So I enjoyed any kind of those sort of chasing game type things. It became harder when I went to sort of larger schools and the playground became a lot bigger. And so therefore, as what I mentioned earlier, sort of just finding people did become a bit harder. So, that was easier when we weren't all wearing school uniforms, for example. So you could actually go, oh, right, Richard's wearing a red jumper today, I'm going to go and find the red jumper. And then you'd run up someone, you're wearing a red jumper, but you're not, Richard. Right. It did mean we got to do some other fun things. So because I wasn't doing rugby, I was actually told to grab some friends and go for a run, as in cross-country, which I did quite like doing cross-country running, actually. But, telling a group of sort of young teenagers to grab your friends and go for a run, well, obviously we went down the park and sat on the swings. So they evidently caught on to this and assigned us a teacher to take us up to some fields, and they took us orienteering, which was great. Again, slightly perhaps misguided in terms of trying to get me to look at a compass and a map. But that's what my partner sort of was intended to do. And so they split us up into teams, and a partner was assigned to me, and we ran around the fields doing orienteering. It was great fun. I loved that. That was brilliant. So we did that instead of playing soccer and rugby and things. Social stuff. Well, one of the kind of hang-ups, as it were, that I had as a teenager, when we were trying to go out and meet girls, was the fact that basically I wouldn't know when someone was looking at me. So we would go up to the sort of shopping centre and try and meet girls from the local girls' school, because I was an all-boys school. So my kind of thing was that I wouldn't know when someone I knew was actually close by, and so I had this real kind of complex around, am I ignoring people or being seen to ignore people rather than when actually I just don't know they're there. So am I sort of being seen to be rude or whatever, or just not spot people at all? So yeah, there were sort of things like that. Yeah, just sort of not recognising people, and certainly just to jump forward when I had cataracts 2 years two ago now, I had to start telling people to introduce themselves to me when they came to talk to me. So people I knew, I had to tell them, I need you to say, oh, it's Dave. Hi James, it's Dave. All right, great, okay. Because I just couldn't see them well enough. I've now had cataract surgery, and so I'm back to the sight I've kind of always had now. So the kind of things that I got up to as a sort of teenager and young man, I really liked riding my bike. I would go out all day with my friends, riding around town with my bike. Always had fun doing that. But I did enjoy doing things that didn't sort of require my sight. So as I mentioned, sort of things like cross-country running, swimming I really enjoyed. I took part in some competitions in regards to swimming. Chess I enjoyed. I actually set up a little chess club at my school and a whole tournament for the whole school to take part in. Backgammon I really like. So I like anything that's kind of strategy type games and things where I can kind of use my sort of mental skill rather than kind of physical and visual acuity. In later life, I took up jiu-jitsu as a martial art. I sort of decided I needed to be keeping fitter, and sort of decided, well, actually, jiu-jitsu or judo rather is a Paralympic sport, so there must be loads of people out there doing that. And I eventually found there was a lot harder to find the right kind of teacher for that, actually. So eventually I found a teacher who was very aware of visual impairment and how to teach people with it, in that he wouldn't just stand at the front of the class and demonstrate something. While he was doing that, he would give very clear, specific instructions as to what he was doing. He would actually describe where he was putting his hands and what he was doing. And then once he'd done his demonstration, he would come over to me and he would demonstrate again closer up, and then actually demonstrate on me as well, as I said I was learning. So he was very good. So that's the kind of thing. Again, going back to the education thing, I would stress. Other social things, I like all the usual kind of stuff. I do like going to the cinema or going to theatres and things like that. Again, I might use my monocular to see what's happening up on stage. I will occasionally have to sort of turn to my partner and say, I don't understand, who is that? Is that the character that did that other thing? Or sometimes even she'll actually lean over to me and go, you're aware that so-and-so did this before? So they'll often in films, for example, there'll be a kind of expose, there'll be a kind of in the background of a shot, our hero will leave a card behind for someone else to find, but that's really in the background of a shot, you don't really see it. And so sometimes my partner will kind of lean across and go, he's just done that thing, because that's going to be a plot point later, sort of thing. So you kind of end up learning these things, what visually impaired people need, and the kind of particular sort of struggles they have with things. That's how you can help them. Other than that, like going to things like comedy and anything like that as well. You can go on touch tours, for example, for theatre performances and things, so where you actually go up on stage or behind the scenes and you get to touch and look closely at the costumes and the props and things, so that when you are then later sitting in the audience, you have a much better idea of, oh, there's the person with the spangly dress. Oh, I know what that is. I know what that character is. Or when they're kind of waving the magic lantern or whatever it is, aren't they? Then you know what they're actually referring to. So those kind of facilities exist, and you can sign up to go on those kind of tours and things. Other kind of more specific little things that you have to sort of learn to sort of do. It's just sort of things like you can't, when you're sitting in a bar, for example, you can't kind of look around and establish where the toilets are. And so you have to ask someone at your table where they are. With a bit of luck, they'll just be able to give you a general direction of where they are. But sometimes, and again, it depends on the level of sight you've got. So I should probably say at that point that my level of sight that I've had, apart from the couple of years where I had cataracts, my level of sight, as I perceive it, is around the kind of best of the people that I've met with Aniridia. As in, I don't use a white cane, for example, or anything like that. I am sort of perfectly mobile without assistance. It gets harder when it's dark. It might be the problem. But I don't use a guide dog or a cane or anything like that. And so Aniridia is very variable in terms of the effects it has on people. So some people do need those. But in terms of work, So because I'd been given these laptops and things at an early age, and of course when they inevitably went wrong, I had to work out how to fix them. So I started getting quite good at computers at an early age, and I was keen to take that further and actually study computing. So eventually I got to do maths computing at university. I was kind of dissuaded from studying it earlier in favour of doing things like French and stuff instead. But so I did computing, so I learned to be a programmer. So part of my degree I went and did a placement with IBM for a year, and then left. I graduated, I became a web developer, and I then sort of basically progressed from being a kind of techie into being a very much more general communications person on digital. So I did things like social media and podcasts and campaign websites and sort of project management. And eventually I got into more general usability of digital systems. And then that eventually progressed to becoming a civil servant. I now work for the government, and specifically I work on accessibility. So I'm actually sort of closing the loop now in that I'm actually making sure that the websites and online services that the British government is creating are usable by people who have visual impairments and other disabilities. So I kind of act in a kind of consultative role as a sort of expert in this stuff for developers and other professionals on digital services. And I'm really enjoying that. It's been quite a journey that I've been through in terms of work, in terms of sort of the progression from one kind of extreme, as it were, to the other. Viewer 112. What eye drops are available in the US for aniridia patients? I have no idea. There are lots of different types of eye drops you can get. In general, eye drops, as far as aniridia is concerned, are for two main things. I'm slightly dodgy ground here in terms of my knowledge, but typically you will take eye drops for glaucoma to reduce high pressure in the eye. If you have glaucoma, that is. If you don't take those. That's basically why it's very important to have your pressures checked, usually on at least an annual basis, potentially more than that, particularly if you're younger. So yeah, you might take eye drops for glaucoma, or more typically for dry eye or cornea disease, where you basically are trying to prevent damage of one kind or another to the cornea, the edge, the sort of surface of the eye. And that's because in aniridia, the genetic mutation we have affects the production of what are called limbal stem cells, which basically make the cornea regenerate and keep it going, because it's constantly being sloughed off every time you're kind of blinking or rub your eyes or anything like that. Your cornea is being damaged, and so it's constantly being replaced by these stem cells. But in aniridia, they don't work properly. What work properly means is still under scientific research. So these eye drops are typically called things like hydropomalose. I use one called Soluvic. Some people feel that different eye drops kind of irritate them more than make them feel comfortable. So you kind of do need to sort of try some different ones. In the UK at least, you can get these without a prescription. So the one I use, I say Soluvic, Celluvisc. Hydropomalose is another one. I found those, and I found they irritated my eyes as soon as I put them in. And you can get them in different concentrations as well. So these ones, for example, are 0.5, whatever that means, 0.5 like active ingredient or something, I don't know. You get them in different concentrations. But you also need to consult your doctor about that. But these ones now I know what I like and what are suitable for me. I just order these myself without prescription. So those are basically for dry eye. So if someone with aniridia is kind of constantly rubbing their eyes, if it feels like there's grit in there in your eye, or that they're sore, particularly after you've been out in the sun a lot or using a computer a lot, if your eyes feel really gritty and kind of tired, putting those in is kind of basically, first of all, it's like a soother, but it is actually providing lubrication on the eye, because it can also be not just the absence of these limbal stem cells, but your tears basically aren't as good quality as they should be, and so that causes them your eye to become drier than it should be. So yeah, if you're experiencing those symptoms, then you need to be telling your doctor about it and getting their prescription. It does get a lot higher tech. You do get eye drops that are actually made from your own blood. They're called like serum drops or something. Basically, they extract blood from you and then create eye drops from that, and then you administer them back to yourself. I'm not quite sure the details of why that's a thing. it's probably something to do with kind of being more effective or allergies or something like that. I'm not quite sure. Again, this would all be stuff that your doctor would advise on. It's funny, I'm having a bit of an Aniridia situation in my room right now where I'm doing this. Every 5 minutes I'm getting up and adjusting the Venetian blind that's on the window. At the moment it's closed, but at the same time the sun, I think, has probably just gone in behind a cloud, and so the room is now really dark. And so I'm now going to open the blind a bit again. But then what happens is the sun comes out and I have to get up and close the blind again. But yeah, so we just moved into this house, and we made sure we put up nice Venetian blinds at all the kind of windows on the south-facing windows, because just the simple curtains weren't strong enough, basically. We even bought some blackout blinds, and it turned out they weren't actual blackout blinds. They still let a fair amount of glare through all around the edges as well. So we made sure we put in Venetian blinds. Typical question is around driving and mobility. So I'm not eligible to drive in general in the UK. With vision impairment, you are not allowed to drive. In some places in America, I believe you can with certain sort of binocular type devices type things. So I'm not allowed to drive. My parents did let me have a go in their car once in the university car park. That was a lot of fun. When it was all deserted, they let me have a poodle around in their automatic car. And my dad just said, if anything goes wrong, just take your feet off the pedals and I'll put on the handbrake. So that was good fun. They did at some point send me tank driving. I got to go and drive a tank around the British countryside, which is absolutely fantastic. So obviously I could do a lot more damage in that way because there was nowhere around. But at the same time, I was sort of extensively protected, of course, by the tanking itself as well. We never actually told them that I had a vision impairment. I also like going go-karting, and again, they don't actually ask you, do you have a vision impairment? So we didn't tell them. But yeah, I've done go-karting a few times in my life, and I've really enjoyed that. And in fact, the last time I went, I actually managed to get a fastest lap than all my friends. Which I can only imagine was a case of, obviously late braking is the whole thing in motor racing. And of course I braked and I could see the wall, which was obviously quite late. So I enjoy those kind of things. Absolutely don't let things sort of stop you. Do go out and experience things and try and achieve. Absolutely, it's my message there. There will be things that are harder, but equally there are things that will suit your aptitude and ways you can succeed and indeed excel compared to other people as well. You just basically need the right support and the right attitude to go and getting things done.